But Jennifer Cohen, the one and only, welcome to our show. I think it can be nice if you introduce yourself.
Yes, my past is I have a big part of my past and my present actually is fitness for sure. I've written a bunch of fitness and health books. I've written a lot of fitness and diet books. I had a fitness app that was acquired by Weight Watchers. I had a fitness shoe that was a weighted shoe that people would wear. And the idea was that this was my first company called No Gym Required. And what it was a shoe that had an interchangeable midsole. So you would add 25% more calories to what you burn because of the added resistance. And I think that was even before its time. It was such a great concept. I loved this company. It's called, like I said, the shoe was called the NGR shoe. The company was called No Gym Required. That was the name of my first book. And I've always just been someone who's been super passionate about fitness. I love it. I think it's really important to have that as a piece of your everyday routine to help with success in every other part of your life. And so I believe that is part of why I've had success in other parts of my life, because I took fitness seriously and it taught me so much when I did. Fitness taught me about, like I said to you before we started, the goal setting, and it gave me the self-esteem and the confidence to kind of go after things, because in fitness you set goals, and once you see yourself achieving those goals, right, it gives you that confidence to try for another one. And I think, like I said, the discipline, the goal setting, the idea of having something that you've actually gone after and achieved just gives you that motivation to keep on going. So I believe with my podcast, we do a lot of things in health, wellness, mental health, physical health, because it's such a huge component for success.
You believe in routine, and you said
I believe
that routine
hugely.
is a big part of it.
Hence my podcast. It's called Habits and Hustle for a reason. I think that people are essentially what they do over and over and over again, which are habits. And habits are part of a routine, part of a regimen.
So how much do you think it comes down to when it comes down to business? Because obviously in fitness, everyone would say absolutely. You need to have force of habit. You need to go and be disciplined. Even if you don't want to hit the gym, you have to hit the gym. I think most people don't realize how imperative it is when you run a business. And you say, no, it comes down to business as well. So when you say habits comes down to business as well, and you need the routine in your business, and that is why you have that. Tell us, how do you go and influence people to understand that?
Well, no, what I'm saying is that two parts. I think that people have to have some form of discipline, that they're going to do things even when they don't want to do it, which is why discipline is so important, because most of the time I don't feel like working out. Most of the time I don't feel like necessarily working when I'd rather sit on a beach. But when I have the discipline and I know what my goals are and I know what I want my outcome to be, that's the discipline, and it's the routines that I put in place for myself to keep me on point and keep me on track. And I think that's what's really important.
By the way, before you got here, you actually went to the gym. You just came from LA, and with the hours different, you didn't sleep good at night. You went first, hit the gym, did what you need to do, got this out of the way, and then you showed up over here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, and I noticed that.
It's imperative. Okay, yes. It's a non-negotiable. I will work out, and I say this all the time on my social media, like, do it even when you don't want to. And that's what it's about. I work out even when I don't feel like it, because it's already ingrained in my DNA. It's part of my day. It's part of my DNA to such a point where if I don't do it, I feel like something is missing. And I believe energy begets energy. So when people say things like, I don't have time to work out, I think that's it's such a load of shit. You have time to take a shower, you have time to brush your teeth. I believe doing something that you're moving your body and you're sweating should be just as ritualistic as brushing your teeth and or taking a shower.
Is there a percentage between motivation and discipline?
I don't believe in motivation. I think what motivation is a very overused word, right? Because you can have motivation 1 minute and you can lose it the next. Motivation wanes. You can't rely on motivation for your success and for getting something done. I think discipline is something way more
So you don't attribute
useful.
any percentage to motivation?
The only thing that what I said at the beginning of this whole podcast was the only thing that's motivational, what motivates me is a success I had prior to that. That gives me that extra oomph or motivation, so to speak, quote unquote, to move to the next thing. But motivation is something like it has to be something bigger than motivation to get you from point A to point Z, right? Motivation can help. Like you go to a Tony Robbins seminar and it can give you that motivation to start something. The starting is not the problem.
It's the carrying through. It's the continuing on.
It's the middle that's the hardest part,
After the
right?
motivation wanes and it's, you haven't reached the pinnacle of what you want to achieve yet, so it gets tough. And that initial fire, that's long gone out.
Right, absolutely.
But that point you made was actually very interesting. The point you made about if people don't want to go to the gym and they say they don't have time for it, it's just an excuse. But it's ultimately because they haven't prioritized it.
Absolutely.
It's not a priority.
Like I said, it's about non-negotiables. There are certain things that you just make as a non-negotiable.
How do you do that? How do you make it a non-negotiable?
Well, it is my non-negotiable because I've seen what it's like when I don't work out. But you have to get to a point in your life, or you got to get to a point where you stick to something long enough where you see the benefit and the return on investment, right?
Well,
and if you stop
wouldn't
too
that
soon,
build motivation? So once you say, okay, at first I start with no motivation, I start with discipline, and I have no motivation to hit the gym or start a business, but I still know I have to do it. But then once you start seeing results, that builds motivation, that gives you a different form of energy to go and proceed and convince other people, don't you? Because that where people are big now is forget motivation. It's all about discipline, which I absolutely agree about. Discipline is if you have no discipline, you don't have to. It doesn't matter. Motivation is going to go away as soon as it's a raining day, right? But once you add motivation into it, and I think Robert Greene said something interesting. He said, "Look, Einstein without motivation wouldn't go for a decade to come up with that final formula at the end. You needed some form of a motivation infused into a disciplinary process."
Well, I think that we can reverse engineer here, right? This is the thing. I think you have to work backwards, right? I think that you get motivation once you see the return on the investment,
Correct, yes.
okay? So I know how I'm going to feel if I don't work out, and I know how I'm going to feel if I do work out.
Okay.
I also know that it's an excuse that I use on myself when I say, oh, I'm too tired, because there has never been a workout in my life that I've ever regretted doing, no matter how tired I am. And especially when I'm tired, right? Because when I'm the most tired, I still push myself because it gives me that oomph that I need, that little energy resource that I would never have gotten otherwise. So the misconception and the mistruth about exercise is that it makes you tired if you exert yourself, which I think is absolutely wrong. Yeah. I think that exertion, that sweat, when you put your body through that stress, it actually invigorates you. It gives you that extra energy that you need to continue on, or to give you the motivation as you go.
Once you're already in it, you're already on a roll, and it's easier to continue.
And afterwards, you feel better, right? Because it's like you get your endorphins.
Have you ever done ice bath?
Yeah, cold plunging. Yeah, of course.
So you agree that you have no motivation jumping into this thing,
it's terrible.
but you feel amazing after that, right?
You said something important. You said
terrible.
That you have to find these little milestones that you achieve to feel that ROI, right?
Right.
So with working out, it's easy because it's immediate. It's like you literally work out, you have the endorphins, you feel good. I mean, you look better than you did like when you walked into the gym. Same with the ice bath. You hate it.
It's actually,
no.
I got to say something about that. Not to interrupt you, but I want to interject for a second.
Interject as much as you want.
Okay, I'm going to interject. Believe me, I'm going to.
Yeah.
Okay, my interjection for this particular part is exercise is hard because depending on where you're starting from, you could be going to the gym or working out day to day and not see any results. And so therefore that's not very motivation. It doesn't give you that motivation. And also it does the opposite effect, right? It's about sticking with something long enough with that discipline that I talked about, that you have to keep on going even when you don't see a result, because you have hope. Hope is the thing that I think is very important, that you will eventually get to that goal. And once you see like a glimpse of that goal that you're going for, whatever it is, it could be weight loss, it could be an added energy to your day, it could be health, it could be a lot of different things. That will give you, and to your word that you love, motivation to keep on going. Because that's what you need, that you need to keep on going until you actually feel a difference when you don't go. So,
and now you get obsessed with it when you start to feel that.
Well, you get obsessed with the feeling of like, you know what, I don't want to feel like shit. I like to feel on point. To me, at this point in my life, I'm not doing exercise. I'm not exercising daily because I'm trying to get like a six pack and because I like want to like for vanity reasons. Is there a percentage of vanity? Of course there is, and I would be a liar. And anybody who tells you they're not working out because
a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah, it's a bunch of bullshit. Yeah. Everyone's working out because they want to look better at some point. Okay, but I'm not. But what I am saying, really, where it mostly falls into the mental aspect for me, because when if I would have not worked out today when I got here, even though I haven't slept even an hour because the time difference and everything else, I would have been a total disaster, not just a half disaster when I showed up today, because I didn't sleep at all, right? But the exercise portion of it gives me much more mental focus. I'm much more alert. I'm much more on point. I'm cognitively much more aware, and when I don't, it dulls my mental ability.
I feel that.
So for me, it's like a win-win, physically, mentally, and everything else. Now,
it's like a therapy. I totally agree. For me, it's a therapy. I go to the gym because I need to disconnect from everything I do throughout the day.
Right.
And that is the only way I can disconnect. Otherwise, my brain keeps running, and I need that break. And
right.
That's the only way.
It's meditation. So I'm not somebody who can sit in a position and meditate the way traditionally people think about meditation. My meditation is me running or jogging or cardio. Cardio for me is the time when I can like really get into my thoughts, get into my head. And that to me is my form. So again, another misconception. I think that people feel like because it's like a fad or it's cool that everyone sits with their legs crossed and their fingertips together and that's the only type of meditation there can be. But everybody's different. You know, what works for one person doesn't work for another person, right? Like I believe that there's lots of different forms of meditation. For me, my kind of personality, I've tried it all. I've tried yoga. It's not my thing. I've tried meditation. Not my thing. Have I tried it 75,000 times in every kind of version there possible? Transformative meditation. I've tried vinyasa yoga. I've tried this. No, I'm looking at the clock and like it does not work for me.
I totally relate to that.
You know?
Okay,
doesn't work.
I have a question.
Totally
Because if fitness starts to become part of your like mental health, what are some of the things that you see how has that impacted your life? So for example, if you don't go to the gym, you feel down, you feel like you're not cognitively there, you feel like you're almost like operating at half capacity. I'll give you some examples for me. So for me, I mean, I don't enjoy like a really good meal sometimes unless I have a good workout ahead of time. Mm-hmm. So that's something that I know is silly. It doesn't really mean anything.
Makes
but to me,
perfect sense to me.
I enjoy a really good meal, but only after I do a good workout. If I'm traveling for business, I'll look for hotels that have great gyms.
100%.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the big joke. Okay,
Yeah.
First of all,
do you do this
oh
too?
Oh my god, I people like it's funny because like the second I get to the hotel I'm staying at, the first thing I do before I even go into I drop my bag off in my room, maybe.
Yeah.
Or I don't even bother. I just go right to the gym. It's more important for me to have a functional gym than it is to have a great room. So to me, the biggest highlight or the biggest priority when I pick a hotel when I travel is definitely what the hotel gym is. To me, it makes the entire trip. It's the biggest, most important part of the trip. If it's a shitty gym, the trip's going to be shitty.
I agree 100%.
Right?
Yeah. That's why actually traveling to New York is so difficult.
Yes.
Because New York is the worst for hotel gyms. 'Cause they're all
100%.
What about
abundant.
like an
They're
LA
all
Fitness
boutique
nearby
gyms
or
now.
something?
No,
Just
it's not the same.
never the same.
Well, if you have a gym membership, but I mean, if you stay in Manhattan, like
Yeah.
you,
There's nothing. Yeah,
Well,
it's
no, you
never
can
the
walk to like Equinox. There's a lot of like
Yeah.
boutique gyms
Yeah.
you can go to. But now in New York, I feel it's true. Like there's so many like boutique hotels that they don't even have gyms, or they have like a dumbbell.
What
Yeah.
about getting a rubber bands with you? Because that's what I usually
That's
do.
great. I mean,
get
listen,
rubber, resistant bands, not rubber.
resistant
I was
bands.
English though.
Yeah. Well, we can work on that a little bit. No, I think those resistant bands are amazing. To me, it doesn't really. Again, it's like the meditation thing. It doesn't really matter what you do if it works for you, right? If it works for you and you feel
That's all
like
it takes, yeah.
it works and it's doing the trick, great.
No. When you're applying it to business, I'll say this: like when you start a business, you have no fucking clue if it's ever gonna work. The what is that the right business or not? Who knows until it actually hits, right? So, you're right. Discipline is imperative, but people can go on with a business for a while, and if there's no motivation in between, right, it's gonna be hard to continue because you don't know if you have a proof of concept or something. How do you apply this discipline part to say, okay, look, it doesn't really matter if you made it or not, but the discipline part of learning curve as a business.
To business. Well, I think it's different. I think that when you're doing a business, number one, I think it's super important to be doing a business that you're genuinely passionate and interested in. And I hate that. Again, I don't want to sit here and throw a lot of these very trendy hashtag words, like do something that you're passionate about.
Yeah,
because a lot
totally
of
agree with
times
you.
you could be doing it. I could be really
I was so passionate about makeup when I opened BoxyCharm. It was my passion.
Exactly. I'm passionate about watching, Serena Williams play tennis, but am I going to become a professional tennis player? No. So I feel like I think you have to have some kind of realism when you pick what you're doing. What I mean by that is like doing something that you enjoy, but it's in your strike zone. You're good at it. Right? Because
the passion can be the actual business, the building, the creation of the business is the passion.
Like to me, I love negotiating. Okay, that's not exactly a full time. It could be a business. Actually, it is a business for me. A lot of the times, I negotiate on behalf of like a lot of business partners I work with and people I oversee and different things I do. I love it. My thing is, I love the thrill of the chase. I love getting down to like what the deal is going to be, how we're going to do it, who we're going to do it with, kind of like a producer, putting the pieces together, right? I like it, I'm good at it, so therefore I should do something around that area, right? I feel how people should be picking and choosing what they're going to do and what's going to really drive their success over time is doing something that they have a natural tendency to be good at, right? Like where it's innately something that they're good at. I'm bad at math, so for me to become a physicist or a mathematician
or a data analyst,
or a
yeah.
data
You're
analyst,
swimming against the current. You don't need
exactly.
to do it.
You're swimming against the what did you call it?
Against the current.
A current. But that accent, I thought you said quarrent. I'm like, what is that? No, your accent. You got to listen very intently, Carol.
I'm teaching you English over here. This
you
is the
are.
proper English.
The Israeli
right?
in you,
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
And I think that there has to be a nice blend.
How did you find that for you?
Well, number one, I think that naturally, it's not like how did I think a lot of it's trial and error, right? Like I think also people do naturally like to do what they're good at, right? Not to use the gym analogy, but I'm going to use another gym analogy, a fitness analogy here, right? But like, when girls love to work their lower body, right? Why is that? It's because we are naturally stronger in our booty and our legs than we are in our upper body. Mm-hmm. So what happens? We neglect our upper bodies because we're not good at it. We're already weak in that area. So we just forget about it, right? And with guys, it's the opposite, right? Yeah. Guys like to work their chest and their back because they're strong there naturally, and they forget about their legs and they get like these little chicken legs. So I think what happens is we naturally fall into areas in life that we gravitate to areas in life that we are naturally better at, right? But for whatever reason, something happens and there becomes a disconnect with a lot of people, and then like they lose their way, and then because of pressure from what their society tells them or their family tells them or what they think they should do, they separate from that. And then they follow a path that's completely not even in line with who they are as people. And that becomes a whole other rabbit hole. But if we actually just like listen to ourselves and like follow what we naturally are inclined to do and what we gravitate to naturally, we end up doing something we naturally are more passionate for, right? So when you ask me my question, it's like, well, I've always been a very curious person. I've always liked to work, like I was always very interested in people. So it was a natural progression for me to have a podcast. I loved when I started exercising at a young age, around like 15 or 16. I loved how it made me feel. I was also good at it, right? And I saw results. And so I naturally wanted to kind of keep on pursuing it and keep on like digging deeper into that area. So then I became a trainer, and then I wrote books on it, and I had an app about it, and I did all these other things.
But you did do a lot of businesses around your hobbies, right? Because you like to work out. You're not just you're passionate about working out. So whatever you did throughout life was around that, including your podcast, including the brand strategist you were.
No, actually, I started out doing something totally different. That was not really a core interest of mine, which is why it didn't last. And that's how fitness actually became something that I built a real business around. Because I have like my undergrad is in psychology. I have a business degree. And, my first job was with a basketball team. I worked for the NBA. Okay. And then I loved music, always loved music. And I got recruited while I was in business school to go work for BMG Music. Okay. And so I ended up there for a bit. Even though I loved it.
Where did you study?
In business. I did mostly marketing and business. Sports marketing was my thing. And it was a special program in Canada. It was like a 2-year sports marketing specialty. And I did an internship with IMG, and I had all the cool jobs like Nike and this and that. And I loved them all because it was in the periphery of it was in the periphery of activity and fitness, but it really wasn't the fitness part. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so when I went to BMG and I was marketing. I became like the head of marketing, and I got a job to come to LA to work for a different label. It wasn't like I was like super like in love with. I liked it. I was good at it, but was I throwing myself in there to work for 15 hours a day? No. So when I left that, I decided to become a personal trainer, just until I figured out what the hell to do with my life, because I was really young and I fast-tracked. And so when I did that, I was also Canadian, so I wasn't allowed to work legally in the U.S. That was how I was kind of stuck, kind of being very... I didn't have much to... I had to pick something that was easily how I can make money under the table, so to speak. So I became a trainer. And that's when I had that aha moment, as Oprah would say. And I thought, okay, you know what? Now that I'm now a personal trainer, I have my certification. I took my contacts and I took everything I knew from the music world, went back into the music world, made a deal, and negotiated this job that I created for myself, which was a label trainer to train talent for music videos and to train them for tour. So
train them in the gym to kind of
So I went from being a marketing person to running the budgets and marketing for all this talent and like creating marketing
that's
campaigns.
Interesting. So that job it didn't exist. You just showed them there is a gap in the market, and you said you need them to be fit. You need them to come ready. Let me train them.
Yeah, it wasn't that there was a gap in the market. There was no market for it. I knew they were doing it already. There was trainers, personal trainers. But I figured I was taking two worlds. I was taking transferable skills, right? We all have transferable skills. We all have things that we did before in our past that we can utilize for what we're doing in our present or take them for the future. And that's what I did. I took things that I was naturally good at, which were relationship building,
But
kind of.
that did not exist before you told them about this, right?
Well,
As a
I'm sure it
process.
existed to some extent.
But not as a service. Like
I'm not
she
going to say.
commoditized it a little bit and productized it.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I mean, let me say this. Well, I don't know if anyone else was doing it because I didn't give a shit if anyone else was doing it.
Yeah.
I was thinking, listen, now I love exercise. I want to pursue that path, but I have relationships and I have an opportunity where I never wanted to ever cap myself at like a certain amount of money, right? So if I was a trainer, if I was working at Equinox, right,
Okay.
or working at any other gym, I would only be able to make up your number, $100 an hour, $50 an hour, right? And I'm only making that money if that person shows up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now you can charge late fees, whatever, or just charge. My point is you're capped at the amount of money you're allowed to charge somebody based on that hour service. So my idea was a little bit more in depth, which was, what if I went to someone and became a retainer? If I put myself on a retainer where you pay me $5,000 a month and I will train your staff, and if they show up or not, I'm still getting paid. Number one, most of the time, a lot of times people don't show up, they like are late, I didn't want to like have that hurt my I guess my bank account. So that's why I had this idea of going to the labels.
So it was a better way to trade your time for money.
Well,
It was more secure, I
No,
guess.
it was much more of a secure, a way that I was securing myself an exact amount of money per month. So let's say I was making okay, and then I know I'm making $2,000 a month, $5,000 a month, not
Now,
like randomly.
Was that your aha moment that you said about?
No,
okay?
my aha moment was I wanted to be a trainer. I wanted to do something more than train hourly.
Okay.
So that was my idea because I already had the relationships with the people at the label, and I saw there to be an opportunity because all those people, all the talent, I know what they do. I know how they spend their money. I know what they do to get ready for a video. I know what they do to get ready for a tour. It requires a lot of physical training. It requires a certain kind of diet so they can be at their best version. So when they go out there and do a show for 2.5 hours, they're at their best. So I went to the president of one label and I said, listen, this is what I want to do. Pay me X amount of dollars. I will train everybody. And let's see if it works. And he was very confused because I was not a person that was like remember, people meet you, they think of you as how they met you first, right? He thought of me as a bit like a music marketing person.
Yeah.
He wasn't thinking of me as like a personal trainer, physical trainer
Interesting.
for Britney Spears, right? He was thinking like, how am I going to make money from this music campaign that I'm putting together with one of our retailers, with HMV or Tower Records, right? Like it was like kind of a disconnect. Like, wait, you were doing this with this budget, and now you want to come in here and do squats and lunges with, Britney Spears? I'm confused. But I was confident that I could do the job, and the truth is, the out was, if it doesn't work out, then don't pay me. Don't pay me that month. Give me 1 month. Mm-hmm. So I think the trick is also when you're doing something like that is don't put the onus on someone else to say no. Like give them every reason to say yes and no reason to say no, right? So if he didn't have to pay me if it didn't work out, then there's no risk.
Yeah.
So don't give him a risk, right? And so he's like, all right, I guess that's fine. Let's see what happens. And it worked out well because I knew how to I knew their talent already. I knew how their budget worked. I knew a lot of the internal business things that other people in the outside wouldn't know. So I knew how to make it work. And so one label turned into another, that turned into another. And by eventually I had
You're saying so once you already know the politic of one business and you have one or two skill sets, you might find another opportunity on another business that have some similarities or a skill set that no one uses in that category. You already know the politic, you know the people involved, you have the relationship. You can just apply it.
I'm saying use your assets. Use what you're good at and then amplify them.
Amplify the
That's
assets.
what I'm saying.
Yes.
Amplify the assets that you were already given, right? And don't be afraid of what if someone says no. Don't be afraid if it doesn't work out. What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
My entire brand is based on this one phrase, which is, what is the worst that can happen? You're no worse off now than you would have been yesterday by not even trying, right? So like, I think that you have to like lean really hard into what you're good at. What are those assets, and then like just double down, and then like go for it. And if it doesn't work out, then you pivot. It doesn't work out, you try again. But you don't know unless you try. So I knew I loved fitness. I knew the music world. So what I did was I took transferable skills. I took something that I kind of already knew to an area that I really wanted to be in, and I kind of like merge them together into an opportunity. And do this when you're young. And I'm not saying that you can't do it when you're old, but I think you have to do a lot
take more risks
of lot of trial and error when you're young to really know what you want to do, as opposed to just like picking something and being like, this is what I want to do, and then when you're in middle-aged being like, I don't really want to do it. Yeah, you can change your career. Of course, anyone can change at any time. I'm a big proponent of age is really just a number, and you can do whatever you want whenever you want. But I do believe when the less we know, the better it is, right? Naivety to me is a huge strength, because if you don't know something, you're much more apt to take that risk, right? Now, 20 years later, if I knew it, if I actually didn't know.
You can also disrupt an industry if you didn't know, because there are taboos that every industry creates where they say, oh, we know not to do that. And then it's just a law that was out there. No one is trying until someone new shows up. Elon Musk shows up. Let's just do electric cars. It's not going to work. He keeps on, and eventually he changes the industry, right?
It becomes an industry. It doesn't even change an industry.
The automobile industry or something. Like, it goes to the space, right? I'm gonna bring the rocket back. It's crazy. Boom, brings it back.
Well, that's the worst thing you can say, right?
We're the worst. Yes.
Like the worst thing you can say is that this is the way it's always been done.
Yes.
Right.
That kills
100%.
any innovation.
Of course. I mean, and that happens with most people, right? A lot of times, in my I've had and I'm sure you guys do, you've had these ideas and then people burst your bubble and they're like, oh, you got that's already done, or that's already
we don't do it that way.
We don't do it that
all
way, or this happens. And so you lose that again. I always go back to this hope thing. You lose that hope and that inspiration to do it because you're listening to too many people.
I have this thing that I just ignore everyone.
I say that I agree, and I also don't believe. That's why I talk about the fact that I don't believe in even having mentors necessarily, because I think everybody is going to be giving you
They're going to mold you.
They're going to mold you to what their experience has been, and no one's.
Are you familiar with this brand? It's a skincare brand called Touch and. I think it calls Touch and Soul. It's a Brazilian brand, and the Brazilian brand, the owners were actually industry people. It's two Korean ladies, and
what's it called?
I want to say Touch and Soul or Sol de Janeiro. I'm sorry,
I allowed to
Sol
look at
de
it?
Janeiro. Yeah, you can check Sol de Janeiro. And they said that the first rule they learned when they went into the L'Oreal and Lauder when they started their brand is that no matter what you do, you never do a white cap for your packaging, white cap, and a yellow component underneath it. So you don't want to have a white cup and yellow. It doesn't work. So the first thing they did with the first item,
cup.
Yes,
Cap.
a cup. To close the. If you have a jar, the jar should not be yellow, and the top and the cup should be white.
Why?
Rule in the beauty industry: no one ever does this because someone said not to do it. So the first thing they did was, let's make it yellow and white. And guess what? That's the only one that stood out on Sephora, and that blew out.
No way.
Yes, it was making a killing. So when someone tells you don't do it, ask why not. If they don't have a straight answer, go ahead and try it. Go ahead and try it. There are just industries that are dinosaur industries that they needed some shaking. They needed someone to modify those industries. And when you look at any traditional industry that was just hard to enter until it wasn't, especially now with social media, you can know almost any industry you can come into. It needed a disruption. And you find that when I started Boxy, it was just, why? You give us all those rules before you even start thinking about what's important. And you find out someone that's not from the industry only think about what's important, and all those taboos, on those new steps you have to do, you don't think about it. So all your moves are critical because it's urgent and important. You don't do anything that you don't have any waste in your time, in your meetings. It's only about what's important, and that's how you grow.
This is actually a big issue with startups when startups try and hire really experienced talent.
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
And then you bring in this experienced talent, and the founder is super creative. They've never been in the industry. They want to build something brand new. Then you bring in this experienced talent, and it's like a snuffer, like on that candle, right? It just like kills everything, and then you slow down, and then you don't have speed and you don't have velocity because everything has to be done the way it's always been done.
Yeah,
so
that's 100% true, and that's why I could not agree with you more. I see that.
You see this, I'm sure, with the
I
brands.
see that all the time. And stuff with me, like I think I come to everything with such a naivety, right? Like I get all these,
actually awesome.
which is I think. I mean, listen, I think it is, and then that's why I don't allow. I've seen it. It's happened before many times in my life, in my career. I get my best ideas when I'm running on a treadmill. I don't know why. That's when I get
your meditation.
That's my meditation,
Yeah.
and I get my best ideas. And there's been many times when I jump off the treadmill and I get this inspiration, and I say it to somebody, and they're like, "Oh my God, that's so stupid," or "That's not going to work." And then it really it takes the wind out of your sails, and then I never pursue it. And then I see, like a year, 2 years later, it's happened before, that happened, someone else did it, and it became like a massive success. So number one, that's the first thing I was going to say. Number two, I also feel like, again, this hope is such a big thing, but I think that's why when you speak to somebody, sometimes it's best not to either have one or two people that you really kind of value their opinion, but honestly, that naivety, I think when you surround yourself with people who haven't done it before, you get way more value than going around a lot of people that are way too experienced, because that's what makes them so myopic, and that's when they can only see what's in front of them. And to me, that's like the stop is in the start. Then you don't even do it because someone's already taken out that hope and that interest.
I feel like the commonality when you follow a particular process because you came from an industry and you're doing what everyone else is doing, is that you kind of stand in traffic because we're all going the same direction, instead of someone new that comes in and they just move to the left lane that's empty, and we don't go there. Why? I don't know. We just don't. We're all staying in that lane.
We're like sheep. It's like being sheep.
Yeah.
People
Herd.
just follow the herd.
Yes.
Because one person's done it doesn't mean that, or because someone has not done it, or because it's scary to do something different, doesn't mean that you shouldn't be doing something different, and doesn't mean it's not going to be successful, right? Because the only way to disrupt anything is to disrupt something, right?
To do it a different way. That's the definition of disruption.
That is the definition of disruption, is to do it a different way, or to do it Elon Musk is a great example. Who would have thought in a million years that there would be now every single car company is now making an electric car?
Yeah, and the kind of backlash that he was getting. I mean, I remember an interview where someone told him that during the time when he just started Tesla, he was talking in a conference, and the CEO of Mercedes was sitting next to the reporter, and he told him, "Aren't you going to do electric car?" And he told him, "The guy doesn't know what he's doing. He's going to fail." And now look at Mercedes trying to copy a decade later what Elon Musk was doing.
A decade later.
And that's coming from Mercedes. I mean, they're innovators, supposedly they're good, but here it is. So it can happen to everybody. But when we're looking at what we're doing, there's always mistakes that we did. Were kind of like a learnable lesson. There are good mistakes, good we did this. Do you have any kind of experience where you messed it up and you kind of learned you did this? You're happy you did this because you learned something?
Yes, I think that I'm going to say that I think sometimes someone's best quality is also can be their worst quality. And I think for me, that is, I'm extremely impulsive. Okay. And sometimes I do things, again, out of that excitement and naivete in a way, or just actually a lot of times in this regard to excitement. And I've done a lot of different things where if I would have just taken a breath and taken a beat and stepped back, I wouldn't have shot myself on the foot as much times. And I did that with my first company called No Gym Required. And I
Give
made
us like a good example.
Like what happened with it? With
I punched him in the face. I shouldn't have done this.
Yeah, right. I did a deal with somebody who it was a shoe deal, and I spent a lot of money on the legalities. That was like my first company I've ever done, and I really desperately wanted to do the deal. And this is another thing, right? Like sometimes if you want something so bad, it's like you can't see the forest in front of the trees, right? Like you'll make up every excuse. Like there was a lot of red flags why I shouldn't have done that deal, but I just wanted to do it so badly. Like to me, it was such a sign of that I've succeeded, or that the work I did pay off if I got this big deal, that I just didn't want to like see all the red flags. And there were a lot of red flags. And long story short, I'd made the deal. And once the papers were technically signed and we started, turned out to be a whole different thing than I thought it was going to be. And I had to get out of the deal. And it was a fortune to get out of the deal. And relationships were fractured because of it. And it basically didn't end well for me. So, a lot of times perception is not reality. I can sit here and say, oh yeah, I had a great exit with my first company because technically I did. I got acquired by someone, but it was a shitty deal and it didn't end well for me. And I didn't make much money. I actually ended up losing money from all the legal bills. So I guess why I'm saying this is that sometimes as I talk a lot, and my new book is called Bigger, Better, Bolder, because I think it's extremely important to be bold and really chase what you want and not take what you get, and really go after those things. But I think it's also really important to be mindful of who you're getting in bed with, both figuratively and literally, right? And then take a beat, because a lot of times we can act without foresight, and then we can really regret our what we did, and it's hard to unwind. So,
but that point that you're making right now, that came from your original point, which was that excitement can be a bad thing, a detriment, impulsiveness. But also it can be a good
blessing
thing.
And a curse. It's a blessing and a curse, and I think most of us have our best qualities can be our worst qualities. And it's about knowing and being able to discern for when it's working for what.
Yeah.
Right? Like I think that you can take 3 steps forward and 6 steps back sometimes if you're not conscientious of what you're doing.
I totally agree.
Can you give us an example?
I was going to say, Joseph, do you have it? I was going to say, Joseph,
I have a million apps.
Yeah.
I have because I can relate. I'm very impulsive too, and I think that many times I felt myself like, shit, I should have shut the fuck up and listen and ask more questions before I come up with a conclusion. And I found myself. I found that
that's what I do too.
Yeah.
I talk sometimes way more than I should.
Yeah.
And then
because you feel you know it all, and you,
or I feel like I can't I'm excited, and I don't want there to be that silence, or I don't want there to be that moment where I lose the deal.
Tell me if you feel the same, that impulsive people we are very much kind of like urgency for us. Every urgency, I mean, sense of urgency.
Yeah,
is at
sense
the
of
peak.
urgency. That's exactly how I feel.
Yeah, and I think with sense of urgency, we end up breaking eggs here and there, but overall, we capture momentum is better than anybody.
100%. That's what I was going to say. That's something. It's a blessing and a curse. Like, am I further along maybe than I would have been? I think 1,000% I am. Has it broken a few eggs, if not a few dozen eggs, and ruffled a few feathers? 100%. But I think at the net, like I'm still out much. I'm out further than I would have been.
You have to think, like, if you hadn't been impulsive, you hadn't done that deal, you would have been in that company for longer. You wouldn't have had this crappy exit. You wouldn't have. Maybe you'd have rode it out for another 10 years. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly.
And maybe that was a waste of your time. All the other opportunities that came to you after, and maybe because you got burnt I don't know how bad. Maybe you got burnt a little bit from this partnership. Maybe it was a good thing you got burnt earlier on so that you didn't get burnt later on with a bigger deal.
Well, I think there's two things. First of all, I think it's really important for anybody listening for people to have a come to Jesus with themselves on a regular basis, right? Because a lot of times we try to fool ourselves, or we do fool ourselves, and we trick ourselves into why we're doing what we're doing, and we end up doing things for the wrong reasons. Versus if we took a step back, or just didn't do anything and took a pause and thought of why we're doing it in the first place, we can save ourselves a lot of pain and anguish. I think that's the first thing. The second thing I have to say to what you said is, there's a whole, I don't want to like bore you with this whole idiom, but there is a really good one that, one thing, if one thing didn't happen, then the other thing wouldn't happen. I'm going to tell you this story. You may have heard it. And if it's too long, you can edit it out, okay? But I'm going to tell it to you anyway, okay? Have you heard about the Chinese farmer, the story about the Chinese farmer?
With the maybe, with the son that...
Yes.
I haven't heard it.
Okay, I'm going to tell you, okay? And if you don't like this...
I love it. I think it's a great story.
Okay, it's your podcast, so you can always edit it out,
don't
okay?
worry, go ahead.
But I was like, this story always hits home for me every time. So I'm going to share it with you.
Good.
Okay, this is it. So, and if you can interject if you like, there's a Chinese farmer. He loses a horse. Is that the first part of it?
Go on with this because it can be told in different ways. But I'm interested. Told me. Go ahead. Don't worry about me. I love everything you're saying. Go ahead.
Go.
Go.
First of all, just so you know, he's not like an expert in Chinese farmer stories. So
I am, senor. 15 years in university just about farmers in China.
You're like asking him if you nailed the intro.
No, because you know why I did
this
that?
This is how you shake the confidence. I know the story. Maybe I don't. I don't know.
He probably doesn't even know the story. He probably saw it on a hashtag with Chinese farmer.
I'll tell you later. The one I know, but let's see if it's even the same one.
And the only reason why I said that, just FYI, was because I think I forgot the beginning of the story, but I'm going to try it now. The other thing is, why does he have to be a Chinese farmer? It doesn't make any sense. It could be an Israeli. It could be an Israeli farmer, a Mongolian farmer.
The biggest difference you picked was Mongolian farmer. What about American?
I mean, they're right by there, so they get confused. They share a big border together. Who knows?
What about New Zealand farmer?
Yeah, that's not gonna happen because they wouldn't get confused on that.
It could be any race farmer.
Race farmer.
Okay,
yes.
but for the purpose of the story, this is the story of the Chinese farmer. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so there's a Chinese farmer. Okay. He has a wild horse that ran away. Okay?
That's not the one I know.
It's not.
Don't worry about it. Go. Just go. Keep on going. We love the story. It's already better than mine.
Okay, what's the first sentence of your story? And then we're going to go back to mine.
That's the thing. I don't remember my first sentence. I just remember the whole story.
Okay, I'm going to try my story.
Yes.
Okay. There's a Chinese farmer. Okay. He has a pack of wild horses. His most prized wild horse runs away. Okay, all his neighbors and the people in the small community come running to him. They're like, "Oh my God, that's so terrible! What are you going to do now? You need that very famed wild horse. That's terrible for you." And the Chinese farmer very calmly says, well, maybe. Yeah. And so the next day...
I'm an expert in Chinese stories, okay.
The next day... Do you remember the next sentence?
I do. Just continue. Don't worry about me.
Well, I forgot the next sentence.
So the story is that after that, they told him, look, it's a good thing we found the horse. Is it a good thing? He said, maybe. Then his son ride the horse.
Okay, got it. I'm taking over.
Yeah, it's all yours.
So the Chinese farmer...
It's a teamwork.
Yeah, the Chinese farmer said, I'm going to start the story from the beginning now.
Of course. We're going to rewind it on the podcast. All that will be deleted.
You can edit that.
I'm not editing any of this out.
You could edit that if you want.
Yeah.
I'm sorry again. This is the story. The story is there's a Chinese farmer with a pack of wild horses. His most prized wild horse runs away, loses that wild horse. All of his neighbors, all the people in the community run to his house. They couldn't believe this. They're like, oh my God, what are you going to do? That's so horrible for you. Lost your prized wild horse. And the Chinese farmer says, maybe. The next day, the wild horse comes back. Everyone is like just elated. They run to the Chinese farmer's house again. They're like, "Oh my God, you must be so happy that the wild horse is back." The Chinese farmer says, "Maybe." The same day, later on that day, the Chinese farmer's son goes on a horse ride with the wild horse, falls off, breaks his ankles and his legs. And the people in the community and the neighbors run back to the Chinese farmer and say, "Oh my God, you must be so upset. I can't believe this happened. Your son has these broken legs and you must be so just horrified." The Chinese farmer says, "Maybe." The next day, a bunch of people show up at the Chinese farmer's house because they are looking to, they need people for the army, and they were going house to house, getting all the boys to go to fight in the army. They saw the Chinese farmer's son. The Chinese farmer's son could not go anywhere because he had these broken legs. And the neighbors, the community come running back to the Chinese farmer's house, and they're like, "Oh my God, you must be so happy because now your son is free. He doesn't have to go fight in the army. You must be so relieved." The Chinese farmer says, "Maybe." The point and the moral of the story is you never know how one thing is going to affect another thing, right? So even if something doesn't work, and if it's a failure or a total colossal failure, it can be a real success. It can really change the whole trajectory of your life in a really positive, impactful, most important way, right? But you don't know that whole story. So you can't take one piece, one chapter or one page and think that's going to be the entire thing, because it's the accumulation of the entire life that really tells you the real story.
Absolutely.
Is that what you're going to say?
No, yeah. This is exactly what it is, right? You have a mistake in a business. Well, how old were you when it happened? 22, 32. Okay, are you dead? No. Okay, so you're going to learn. You have many more years to go. That's going to teach you now. If you keep doing the same mistake, I mean, I've seen situations where I had people working for me, and you see them making a mistake again and again, and they think it was actually good and they want to double down. And my analogy was you attack Russia in the winter, and now you want to do it every winter. Just you haven't learned. So if you are learning from your mistakes are teachers, and mistakes are a good thing for you to continue, because you need those mistakes. And if you didn't have mistakes, you didn't try hard enough, because you're just on your comfort zone.
And you're not taking enough risks.
Yeah, you're not taking it. I mean, yes. But I think with the story that I was telling you, guys.
Your story or the parable?
The parable story.
Okay.
Yeah, the story that I was trying to explain over and over again with you. Mm-hmm. I think the real moral of that story isn't about that. It's about the fact is you can't count yourself out for a failure or for a misturn or something that didn't go your way, because you don't know what the entire story is.
You haven't finished it.
You haven't finished the. Yes. You haven't finished the story.
The biggest issue with that is that many people don't look at life that way. So a negative event happens, and then it's downward spiral.
That's true.
That's a big issue for a lot of founders.
And they also connect failures. They say, "I failed here," and then they remember all their failures in the past.
They connect all the.
It's so easy to remember the failures.
Yes.
Well, to be honest with you, I don't remember. I think it's the opposite. I think I don't remember. I failed at almost everything I've ever done, but I don't remember anything. If you ask me all the things, when people ask me this all the time on podcasts or interviews, they're like, "Give me your top 3 failures." I mean, yeah, I know. I can name a few of them. But if I actually, I can't, I've been failing for so many years that it's so part of, again, who I am, it doesn't make a difference. If I failed, it obviously didn't, it didn't deter me, or it didn't detract me from trying again and again and again. The thing about that is that you can't allow just something that didn't work out. And by the way, this is not just business. I'm talking about life. I'm talking about relationships. Just because you broke up with someone, or you had a failed marriage, or you had a failed business, doesn't mean that you're not going to be successful on the next round.
Correct.
Right? So you can't let something that didn't work out change the trajectory of what you're going to try to do because you're stuck in what didn't work. I think a lot of what I've done is I've been able to like get myself up and brush off whatever happened and have a really short-term memory of that loss to try for something else. And I think having that short-term memory, so to speak, or not allowing that rumination, that marination and dwelling of all that negative what ifs to kind of change and deter you from trying again. Because you don't know the end of the story. You can kiss a lot of frogs and be out with a lot of jerks and then, find your Prince Charming like 40, when you're like 65 years old. I've met a woman really recently, actually, who was married for 40 years to a man. She wasn't unhappy, but she wasn't happy. And met the love of her life, and she's now 79 years old. I mean, you don't know what you don't know, but you can't just stop living because you're just afraid of what could maybe happen.
Yeah, I guess the way people look at things are that you have a few types of people, right? And it's always going to be like this. You have people that break, and it's hard for them to mentally get up because that was their image. And some other people it's just about the last man standing for them. They're going to continue. They're relentless, no matter how bad it is. So you can see it also on social media. Some people were going through some drama, got canceled, and they never got through this. They just decided to.
I mean, to take it to the extreme, people have
people
committed suicide
Yes.
over being canceled. So
Exactly.
Who?
there's people.
People have.
I won't have names off the top of my head, but I know that I've
See-
seen stories about people that have canceled.
I know
online.
people in the beauty industry
Oh,
that
yeah,
were
that-
canceled, ended up in a hospital because of the stress.
I think bullying.
Never came back.
Really? I think being canceled, being bullied, but I think the bullying is what's really, really.
But what's the difference between that and
disheartening.
cancellation? I don't see a difference.
I think there is a difference. I have a few friends who've been canceled on social media and they just don't give a fuck and they're just doing their life
But
outside.
that's because they handled it better.
Yeah.
Right, but being bullied is when people are like are shaming you for something over and over and over again. I think there's a difference.
Yeah, that's different.
and I
That's
think
different than cancellation.
That's different than cancellation. What I think a bigger question here that maybe you guys want to answer is like, can you teach somebody how to be relentless if it's not something that's naturally in your bones? That's
that would
the
be
question.
your discipline. The disciplined part
I
would
just-
be the best advice. Just continue posting. If it's on social media, continue posting. Eventually, you learn that it dies off, and after the first time, the second time is not as hard. I know a guy
I think that's a very smart point. Is that in anything in life, and it's that continual of doing it over and over again that makes you immune to the negative,
Yes.
the potential negative outcome.
Yeah.
And that's what I actually talk about. I have a whole thing called the 10% target, which is all about that, becoming desensitized to failure, desensitized to someone saying no, where you do it so many times, it doesn't even affect you anymore. It's like water off a duck's ass.
Yes.
Is that a saying?
Now it is.
All right.
You just made the saying, guys. You heard that saying. This is it.
You know what though? The first word in your podcast, habits. That's what I think is actually allows you to.
Yes.
That's how you teach discipline, quote unquote.
Yes.
That's how you teach it. So I don't have to teach discipline if I can teach you that every day to post on social media, you should wake up and from 8 to 9 a.m. you write a post and you push it out. I don't have to teach you anything. I have to tell you the framework, and then if you have to commit to doing that for a long enough period of time, you'll see the results.
So you just did something also, that commit. People don't want to commit. People don't want to commit for long
So you
periods
have
of
to
time.
quantify the outcome, though.
The difference between winners and losers are people who persevere for longer than others. That's all it is. I think it has nothing to do with anything else, but that's what makes somebody, it's like, that's relentlessness. That is perseverance. The only difference between a winner and a loser is how long you stay committed to what you're trying to do and not give up.
You know what you're saying is the classic example for this is when you go through a negotiation. If you're getting divorced, it didn't happen to me, but for some people go through divorce, usually there's that one day that we're sitting down and we're going to finish this, and it can start at 12 and it can end at 4 a.m. Right? And at that time, you see, and it happened actually with us with negotiation when we sold BoxyCharm. It was up until 4 a.m. And at that point, when one pushes the other towards something, you see who's the last man standing because, you know what, just say, give it to them, and you had those red lines, but you're gonna start crossing them
Yes.
because of that one night. And if you go in with a mindset of like, it's about the last man standing, and I'm gonna continue, and I'm okay with walking away with nothing and start a war, or if it's a divorce, whatever it is, right? Partners splitting up their business, anything else. That day, when you sit down with your lawyers and they have their lawyers and you're there to finish this, that is probably going to be about the ones that understand what they're entering. And it's player versus player until the end. And it's anything else in life, right? It's about anything else in life. If you continuously doing it. Now, how do you tell someone that just doesn't have a product market fit and he thinks he has to continue trying to sell that product that doesn't have a market fit? Where is it where you need to say, okay, this is not about discipline and last man standing. This is about you needing to modify your product because the market didn't like
that's
it.
a whole different thing.
How do you go to someone and tell them
No,
this
it's
is
not.
the difference?
It's not.
I think-
And I'll tell you why. Let me just draw a parallel between fitness and business.
Why
So-
fitness?
Because
No,
it's another
it's,
thing that you need discipline with. I mean, if
Oh, you're
if-
talking about that part.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Like, so if you're saying, how do you know if somebody has product market fit and they're trying with their business not working? What if you're doing a workout routine that's not yielding results over 6 months, a year? Like, how do you understand when it's time to cut it, try something
You
new?
modify it, you tweak.
But how do you know? Like, that's what he's asking. How
Not seeing any return on your investment. But I think it's I'll tell you why I think it's different. We talked about this earlier, you and I, right? I think if you have a shitty product, you have a shitty product. All that you can have, it's the product first, marketing second.
Yes.
Right?
That's right.
With fitness, if you're not seeing a return on your investment, if you're not seeing the result that you're trying to get, that's when you have to tweak and modify, right? I think that's a different thing.
You eat a cake every day.
You're right. If you eat a cake, right, exactly. You start to, I can give you things you can do, quantifiable things. Are you journaling? Are you writing down everything you're eating? Are you doing heavy enough weight? Are you doing, are you working out? Are you consistent? Are you blah, 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 right? If you have a shitty product, you can go, okay, how can I modify and tweak this? Is the product, why isn't the product working? Could it be, how can we make it better? Can we make it faster? I don't know what the product is. Can we make it faster?
Well, how
Can we
about
make
your
it more?
product? Was the product that you like? So you
Which
had
product?
You had the
My shoe?
Not the shoe, but you sold the app to eight.
The app, by the way, and I'm not just saying this because I was involved, the app was extraordinary for one main reason, besides lots of other reasons. It's the user. If you're going to have an app, which is it's a tech company, have the tech work. It was extremely user friendly, right? And it was easy to use. If you're in a tech space, make sure the tech is working. If you're in the fitness space, make sure your fitness program has great testimonials and and that thing works. Be exceptional in whatever area that you are supposed to be exceptional in. I personally believe that what we do, we all try to throw a big heavy net, like a big net on everything and be everything to everyone. I think what you should be doing is focusing and be really, really, really good in one area, and then once you get that marketplace, then you can expand outwards, right? I think what a lot of brands are doing, Muscle Milk did this back years ago when I was working with them. Another company, Jim Weed, who is now doing this, who I like this, that they're companies that and I can name other brands too that do this. Some do this very well. If you want to be an energy drink, right, or like a functional energy beverage, right, sell to those people first in the fitness business. Like sell to the CrossFitters, sell to the people who are actually doing it day in, day out. Capture and get that market. Once you got them, then you can expand to the general public, right?
Like niche down first.
Niche down first, and really just make your product, make it so good to the people who are actually going to be using it every single day. And then you can and then you can kind of expand. But what I see a lot of people doing now is they try to throw a lot of shit at the wall, and they try to they water down their usage and their product by trying to be everything to everyone versus being one thing to one person, because you can find way more success in that way.
You know what I like that, because when I was running the company, I kind of like learned that if you want to build a passionate community, it's not about the size of the community, it's about the passion of the community.
Yes.
And you usually need to find commonality, and they have to be in the same space, and they have to activate together. So it has to be a smaller, tight group of people that are already connected, that would be talking about your product as a new product and get passionate around
Absolutely
that.
agree with you, 100. And this is what we were saying earlier. This is about social media in general, right? Everyone is so concerned about the number they have on, like, how many followers people have. How many followers do you have? How many followers do you have? It doesn't matter how many followers you have. If you don't have an engaged community, you can't do shit with those followers, right? So you can buy as many followers as you want, but if those people are not interacting with whatever you're doing,
Useless.
It's a useless way. You can't monetize it for shit.
Yeah.
So why spend your energy, time, money on it? Like, I'd rather have 5,000 followers that are super engaged and active, where I can create an actual legitimate business around, where I can build a community, sell products that are like-minded with them, versus 5 million with 4 people who are barely engaged.
5,000 very engaged people are going to be so loud that
So
can bring in
loud.
so many people, and it's going to be very pervasive for anyone that starts talking to them about your product, and they'll bring in a lot more versus having 500,000 passive, non-engaged followers, or even 5 million that say absolutely nothing. So the numbers of people is about how the challenge is, how do you take all those evangelists and put them together, right, in the same place? Because if you put
No,
all
the
those,
question is, how do you find those evangelists?
how do you find them?
I think that the problem is that there's so many and so much of everything that it's very hard to find your community, because you might be a great product and you might be selling something that's great and you might have all the right intentions behind it, but how do you build that community when let's say you're trying to do a beauty company, like you're saying. Let's say you're a clean beauty line, and you have beautiful makeup that's clean, paraben free, and has no chemicals, but you're already competing with the beauty counter, who has millions of people, and they have a huge engagement and they have a huge community. How do you disrupt if you have a better product, if they have all those people? How do you, if you don't have the money, and if you don't have the money?
Yes, so creativity comes a long way. So I'll tell you the way I believe in. Your job is to make sure that people wouldn't just go and talk about you, but also create pages and groups about your company. How can you influence them to do it? So you find the first one, and then you start talking to that first one, and you get on your page whatever engagement you send your people to that person's page. Intuitively, it would create a lot of people's intuition said, if I'm going to create a page about that company, I'm going to start having followers. Then more starts creating those pages.
Yeah.
And then before you know it, it can be very
How
pervasive.
do you do that, though? Sorry, I should.
So in my experience when I was doing this, and I think it was, it's kind of like easier when we had Boxy, because Boxy, let's just say at one point we had 200,000 followers on Instagram. Later on we got 2 million. But the point is, some people started creating a page about BoxyCharm to exchange products on Facebook. So I joined them. And I would go and talk on the BoxyCharm page saying, do you want to know what's next month in a box? You're not going to hear it over here. Go to those pages. So from one day to another, they went from, say, 1,000 people on their groups to 20,000 people. And then more people wanted to do the same. And everyone that, before you know it, you had 100 people doing those Facebook groups, and I joined them all. And I would do the same on Instagram and fan pages on Instagram. So I said, you talk about Boxy, I'll support you. I'll help you grow. And then they would do the job bringing all the people. They would go and work for you, kind of like on an MLM, knocking on doors, telling people, hey, do you want to buy encyclopedia? That's what they end up doing. And you influence few people, 200, but eventually you had hundreds of thousands because of those 200s. The one group with 90,000, one Instagram page with 90,000.
But yeah, because you had a small group of super engaged people who really genuinely loved that thing, and they were your salesmen. They were the
100%.
ones who did it. That's like the same with Instagram or anything else. It's the 80-20 rule, right? That in life, that's what it works in everything. You have that's what it works. This is so strong. This Don Julio.
It's the first one and you didn't finish it.
Well, Listen, do you know how strong this? It's called Don Julio Primavera 1942. What's the difference between this one and the other Don Julio?
So this is more of a special edition, and this is the traditional
I think
Don
this
Julio.
is Blanco Reposado. No, it's not
I'll
Blanco.
tell you, this
Oh,
one says
that's a
tequila.
Yeah, you're right. This is Reposado.
I don't know if this is Blanco, but
That's-
this is Añejo. Sorry, this is Añejo.
What's
So
the difference between
It's like
no?
Blanco is like white. Like
Yeah,
it
I
looks
like
water.
that one. The
Añejo
Blanco I
is
know.
Where's
like
the thing anejo over here?
on the label.
So what's
Oh.
Onejo? Because I know what
Okay,
Blanco
I
is.
don't know what it actually means.
Oh, okay.
Anejo, I don't know what
It's
anejo
probably
means.
slightly different
But this
flavor.
one says primavera.
okay.
This one says primavera, which means spring.
Got it.
Okay, not trying to brag, but I do speak some Spanish. I'm kind of conversational for one summer class. Again, don't want to be.
Can I tell you something
bragging,
really
but I'm
funny? I literally took a sip of a sip, and I'm a little drunk.
It doesn't take much.
And it doesn't take much. And also, I've been saying since I got here how hungry I am. So the combination of being super hungry and then taking a
You
sip
want
of
more
this,
shots? You want to try this one?
not a good combo.
You want
What?
to try this one now?
I do, but I'm going to be like falling off the chair, and yet I
Chug
haven't
this
eaten
one,
anything.
and I'll give you this one. Chug it.
Chug it? What am I in, like at spring break in Cancun?
I mean, how long? I mean, you want
Chug,
to eat so we
chug,
can make
chug.
it faster. If you finish
I
this, then
know.
I get you this, and then we go eat.
How about we finish the podcast? I
Okay.
go eat something, and then I'll have some
All right,
tequila,
fine.
so I don't
Let's do
fall
that.
off my chair in a drunken mess and embarrass
This,
myself.
this is a
fair.
stable chair, but okay, that's I don't think you're gonna fall. All right,
It is
so
pretty
we're
stable.
we're serious people over here. Let's talk business. over
Now
here.
I understand the whole thing. Now
Now
it
you
makes
understand.
perfect sense. I missed the entire.
You demanded on coming at during the day.
I
and-
didn't understand why you wanted me here at night, really, but now I do.
Yeah.
So you can have a drink
see
and
the
like
reaction.
relax,
Yeah.
exactly. Versus at noon.
What did we start talking about during our break time? When we said let's talk about this, talking about fillers and stuff like that, or people
Oh
mess
no, we're
themselves
talking
up.
about we were looking at people on social media, and we're talking about how LA can be, people look fake there. And I said I see people looking fake everywhere, and you said I don't like when they look fake in the face. You don't
Yeah,
mind
I
the butt.
think that there's a point where they fuck themselves up because they don't see the reality of what they really look like, and they don't stop with fillers and more fillers. Some of them it can really look good, but then they go all crazy. They go, and then
Yeah.
So that's where like boobs, do whatever you want, but then you
That's
can't
what
really
you said.
mess it up.
Boobs do whatever you
Whatever
This
want.
is
you
a
want,
side
yeah.
effect of what you were speaking about before. When people have this like social media, like they just need to have validation through social media, and they need to have more followers. They need to like look a certain way, they need to
Yeah.
act a certain way. I think that all of this, not all of it, but a lot of it comes from like social media.
I think also yes, I agree. But what I was going to say is, I think like anything else, it can happen kind of so slow that it pervasively like gets into your world where you don't know the difference between what's reality
Yes. True.
and what's not reality
Yes.
anymore. It's like you use filters constantly, so when you see yourself in a real mirror without a filter, you can freak out. You're like, oh my God, this is what I really look like, because you trick yourself into this like alternate reality, which is so dangerous.
There are multiple requests now. It's known that the request now going to plastic surgeons by Gen Z is to go and match what you see in filters, where they make a different type of face shape, they modify the face, and
Yeah.
it was just a matter of time until it's gonna happen.
It's really actually so sad. I see these beautiful girls, these young girls who are in their 20s, young 20s, and they're addicted to plastic surgery because of that reason, because they're so accustomed to using Snapchat filters, IG filters, that, to what I just said, it's like they think that they're ugly now in real life, which is A, a huge problem. B, it's so pervasive in your life, and it affects you in so many other ways, like the low self-esteem and insecurity and lack of confidence. It's just terrible. And I don't see it getting any better. It's in fact getting worse and worse and worse.
I have a friend that only dates professional models, and he said he doesn't want to date just regular Instagram girls because they get a bunch of input from guys. But professional models, they always compete with other models, and they always look at every square inch in their face, and they see everything, and they have all that insecurity built in. Where he talks to them, they're the insecure.
Yeah, there is.
And he's not like a spring chicken over there.
Yeah,
We're talking
let me-
about a guy that's like, okay, but
That's
but,
even more of a problem.
yes.
So why is I think that's the issue. So like you started by saying, "Oh, I have this friend who will only date professional
Yes.
models." So what's his insecurity? Does he have to he
Ideally,
has to only date professional models?
It's kind of like an easier prey.
He's
from
what?
what I mean, I didn't ask that, but I would say it's easier prey.
Oh,
where
easier
you-
prey. I
Yes.
got-
It, like, okay. Also, you can know already how to speak to a particular crowd. You know already the lingo. You
I
have
don't
that
think it's a
comfort
positive
zone.
thing. I think it's
No,
to your
yeah.
point.
I'm
like,
saying it's a terrible
yeah,
thing.
it's like it's a really bad thing.
not. And
You need an insecure person to be with you so you can feel secure. But that's something that happens, and I don't think it's the only one.
No, of course it's not the only one. That's an epidemic in itself.
Yes.
But what I mean is that sentence is so disturbing. It's like, I'll only date professional models. It's because only people who are so insecure that they have no idea who they are, what they are, that they need outside validation because of the sound of it. A guy who will only date a model, there's no does that mean there's no other beautiful person or no other beautiful girl in the world besides if their career as a model?
Well, it's almost like a little bit of
And-
narcissism in that too.
Yeah, and it's also like it's like
Yeah.
a status symbol in some way. They're doing
Yeah.
it for status, but even more to that, it's like such a creepy thing to be about. Like,
I mean,
who
I
would
don't
want to
know
only
if
date
it's-
you? Who would want to date you? Like, who are you?
I mean,
in the first
before you get
place?
mad at him, you haven't met him. It's actually it's not bad. But my point is,
To you, he's not bad.
No, man.
He's
My
nice
point-
to me.
My point
That's what it
behind this,
sounds like.
my point behind this is that you get the most beautiful women based on what society said what's beautiful. I don't know, but because they're the model ones that people get willing to pay for pictures. However, they're the more insecure because the entire job is about how they look like, and their comparisons is kind of like more them. And everyone is looking, she has beautiful hair and I don't. And so she would look at those little anecdotal parts, but from the side, people would say, crazy, you're gorgeous. What are you talking about?
Right. Well, it's
Right.
because
But that's
the
why
more
that's what society's messed up.
Yes.
So
That's
that's
such
my
an
whole
issue.
point. That's completely messed up. And I was going to say that now the general public, right, with the pandemic and COVID and being stuck on Zooms now, and now that's become like the norm. Even after COVID has now thankfully kind of dissipated a little bit. We're so used to looking at ourselves on even Zooms that's also another reason why plastic surgery has gone up in this country so much, is because we're constantly staring at our imperfections where we don't think we're pretty enough or attractive enough or whatever. That it's not just the modeling world; it's everybody. And I hate it. I think I belong in the 90s. I want to go back to
I
when
hate it
like
too. Actually, part of the reason, part of the reason why I even started a podcast is because I hate people that bullshit online. I really don't like when people bullshit online. I found that like podcasting is the only way where you can actually get to speak to somebody and actually get all the bullshit aside, and they can't fake a persona for like 2 hours.
yeah, you can. You don't think you can fake a persona for
Not
2
not
hours?
the same way. Not the same way. I think I understand. The point is on
mean,
Instagram.
okay, so in all the different types.
Instagram, you cannot. You really see who the person is, right? Recently, they started adding reels, but it's a very short form content.
But
When you
even a
actually
reel,
look
it's basically a reel is someone's highlights. Like, I mean,
Exactly.
how many people are putting their shittiest moments on Instagram or social media? Almost nobody. So you're only getting everybody's highlight reel, which why all of this is based around things that are so disingenuous and not authentic, which is why I have a love-hate relationship with social media.
I agree, but don't you think that at least okay, you're right. Can somebody bullshit for 2 hours? Yes, they can. But is there a less likelihood that that person can truly bullshit for 2 hours on a podcast versus in a picture?
It's not even about bullshitting. It's about
Yeah,
the fact
well-
that when you're on IG, you don't really have to talk. If you're because
you
I've
can
seen
just
this
show
in the
pic-
beauty
yeah. I
industry.
know.
Many influencers, we used to classify them YouTubers and Instagrammers. The YouTubers can have Instagram, but Instagrammers don't have a YouTube.
Yes.
That's a different because on
Totally
YouTube
true.
you need to be you. Long form content, you talk about everything. You really have
Yes,
people
I
that
agree.
evangelists that love you. Okay, on Instagram you just have people following you and looking at your stuff, but that's it. So when you when you bring in a person into YouTube, you said, okay, now speak to the cameras. They feel insecure because they're not supposed to say anything. I'm just a pretty face, and that's all they're gonna do. Even if they're gonna do real, usually it's gonna be transformations and stuff like that. TikTok is like a little dense, nothing crazy. But when you look at longer form content like a podcast, like talking on YouTube, you see the personality. Those are the ones that can sell on skincare. You only sell it on YouTube. This is not Instagram content type. You need to have a person that people know and trust and say, you know, my skin routine and I keep breaking. Finally, I found something. People would actually follow through with that. That's where you get the conversion for skincare. Color cosmetics, It's for anybody. You swatch it, you can tell you don't need to speak about this. It's
Right.
the instant results. So it's the same thing with everything else. When you go and you put a person on a podcast, now I'm asking you a question. Now I'm talking to you. Now I want to see the intellect that
I know.
comes out of
Have I like sadly disappointed the both of you?
you.
Not
You
at
did
all.
not do
No,
so.
you showed up. You showed up.
Thank
You
you.
100%
killed
showed
it.
up.
Thank you.
You're amazing.
Thank you. No, I'm just, I by the way, I agree with you, Scott, to some degree. A bullshit factor. People can still be in their, I guess, in their, what do you call it? Chris Rock says it perfectly. Like they can still be their sales representative for
Yeah.
2 hours, right? They can still go out there
Yeah.
and like be their, their personality that they show the public.
One thing that I want to just bring out that's I think important for the audience. You speak about habits a lot. How do you
Yeah.
develop good habits?
By doing them. The really, I think we are all trying to find this secret way, the secret sauce of like doing what we need to do to get to get other things we need to do done. And at the end of the day, it all comes down to the most basic thing, which is just do it, as Nike says. The only way you develop habits is to practice and to do something over and over again, and do it over and over again, even when you don't want to do it, and do it again, and then do it again until it becomes habitual, where it becomes so second nature that you miss it or it feels weird when you don't do it. It's as simple as that. Like, let's not overcomplicate something that doesn't need to be overcomplicated. We try to figure things out that with these robust, big explanations that really don't need it. And that's really what I believe.
No, so I think what I'm taking from this is, look, there's going to be a point where eventually you're going to do it because you have to do it. It's going to take a minute or maybe two. But once you keep doing it, it's the right thing to do. But there's going to be that little demon telling you, not today. But once you keep doing it for enough time, you're not going to have to convince
It's
yourself.
practice.
Yeah,
No, you don't. So, like, exactly.
You have
I
to
think
get through that
it's a
hump.
skill. I mean, how to develop good habits is a skill like anything else. You do it by doing something over and over and over
Do
again.
you really
it
believe
becomes
that
you.
21 days to build it, 21 days to kill it, like they're saying?
10,000
No,
hours
I don't
or
think
whatever?
so. I
You
don't
don't
think
think,
so.
right?
I think again, there's no science formula that it's going to say. Maybe for you it takes 21 days. Maybe for you it takes 77 days. Right? Like it
Probably
depends.
because he needs more.
Right. It depends. It
I'm not
depends.
listening to him.
It depends on where your baseline is. Where your baseline is for sticking with something and being consistent with something, and what your discipline level is at your baseline. You can develop discipline, but how far you develop it is going to be based on where you're starting from, right?
Yeah.
Right? So if I'm someone who's like naturally a little bit more athletic than you are, it's going to be easier for me to learn a sport versus someone who maybe is like you, who's not very athletically inclined. Depends on where you are.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Everybody has their point where they start, but I mean,
Their
it goes a long
baseline.
way. No matter what you're gonna do, practice makes better, and eventually, wherever you're gonna be better than what you were. Don't worry about others.
Right.
Yeah.
So like, again, I'm very curious. I'm at a 10 out of 10 starting out, right? You might be at a 1 out of 10. You may not be curious at all
Why are you
about
giving
somebody.
me 1 out of 10? I'm good.
I'm just saying, maybe you're someone who doesn't really give a shit about other people's stories or happenstance, right?
Yeah.
So if you're a 1 and I'm a 10, naturally, it's going to take you.
No, I gotta jump in another topic where, so, how much out of, so when you opened your podcast, why opening a podcast? Why starting a podcast? It takes forever to make it. I get that question. I want to hear it from you.
Because I just said it because I'm really curious.
You're curious. You did
And
it.
I did it for the fact that
for you.
I'm super curious. I love to like go deep and figure out why people do what they do, how they do it. I've always been that way my entire life. And I like to know the intricacies. Like, I'm not so much about broad strokes. I get the broad strokes. I think that most people get the broad strokes. I want to know the like the minutia of everything.
As soon as you came over, you were a podcaster. You started asking me questions and diving deep and deep and deep, and it was as soon as you came. So you did this because you wanted to.
I'm interested
do it
in
for
people.
you. Yeah.
I did it for me because I did it for me and for other people who are similar to me, who just really like are interested and curious in wanting to know why and how people are the way they are. Like I said, if it wasn't for all the other things, I love business, I love being an entrepreneur, but if it wasn't for that, I would have been a psychologist because I'm super fascinated with like the psyche and how and why people do what they do. And I'm not I'm not great with small talk. I don't love talking about like superficial surface level stuff like how was the weather? You know, what did you do this weekend? I want to know like the real shit. And if I don't feel like you're giving me the real shit, this is in life, by the way, I'm not interested. I'm not interested in just like chit-chatty
You know
people.
how we used to call it? It used to be an entrepreneur organization called EO. And we said,
It's like YPO.
Exactly. It's very similar. You have a peer of 8 or so. It's 6 to 12, depends how many it can be. And the idea is that you sit down with them and you need to talk about what's really important for you. And they're saying, there
In
are
the
3
forums,
types.
you mean,
In the
right?
forums, exactly. So you have 5% stuff you don't ever talk about because it's really not important. Then there's another 90% that you can talk about. That's can be things kind of like important but not very important or so on. Then you have the 5% that you tell nobody, or it's really important or urgent. Those are the top 5%. So when we sit down every month, that's what you need to pull out. So at first, when you don't know, you talk about, like you said, the weather, and my wife and the weather, and we started arguing like, yeah, but that's a bar conversation. That you can wait until we're done with our form. Tell me something I really need to. If you have nothing to say this month, don't say nothing. Because maybe one person have that 5%. So when you sit down, when we came up with our podcast, we want to be smarter. Let's fucking do it. Let's bring smart people. So we want to come out better, smarter from that podcast. Ideal. And then when people sit down and listen to us, they were like, you say, well, how much would you want to go and listen to those rich people that people say sitting down talking to each other? This is it. Those successful people, this is it, right? And then you say, this is going to be the top. This is going to be the 5%. Let's talk about what's important. And the idea is how do you get to the 5%? And maybe you can tell me now, because the idea is like, you got to peel the onion, right? But how do you get, when you sit down and you interview a person, because you're a master at this, how do you get to that 5%? How do you pull it out of people?
I think it's being genuinely interested in somebody. I think that people have a really good instinctually, they have a really good bullshit gauge if someone's interested or not. I do. When I'm talking to someone, I can tell pretty quickly why someone's talking, like what they're asking me and why they're asking me, or if they give a shit. I can feel it. It's an emotion. It's like a feeling. It's like sometimes it's just something that's unsaid. Like I think that my approach and how I interact with people in real life is the fact that like I'm genuinely curious. I'm genuinely interested in wanting to know why you and how you're doing something from a place of non-judgment. I'm not asking you because I need something. I'm not asking you because I'm judging you on something. I'm just asking because I'm genuinely interested. And I think when that happens, people feel much more comfortable to share with you.
You asked Mark Cuban a good question. And the reason I say it's a good question is because I've never heard anyone ask him that question. And that was standing out. You ask him, all right, so how many companies are you invested in? And he said, between what I closed and sold and this and that, about 200. I'm like, how the hell are you even managing a portfolio? And he's like, yeah, I got like 12 people doing that. And that's a question I didn't have anyone. No one asked him or Kevin O'Leary or anybody else, like, how many? What does it take from a guy at your size with all those Shark Tank and everything else? How many? So how do you come up with those questions? How is it coming to you? Is it just on the go, or did you write it down before?
Well, I think number one, I research everybody. First of all, I want to back it up. I've come to a place that anybody who comes on my show, on my podcast, are people that I'm initially genuinely super fascinated by or interested in some capacity, that I feel that they are extraordinary in some way. Because if I don't have that off the bat, I feel it. I will be disingenuous. I come across disingenuous, and it's happened where I brought people on where I thought other people thought they were interesting, so then I should have them on.
You clout chase too much.
And then and then
exactly.
like I'm not, and like the content suffers and it wanes because it's like not that interesting for me. So right off the jump, I think coming from a place where like I'm interested in something, it creates a whole different dynamic and a whole different vibe. That's the first part. Secondly, if someone is going to give me their time, I respect the people enough to do my homework and do my research. I will never have someone on who's coming on to promote a book or coming on to talk about their life and then me not do any homework or any research on that. I find that to be super disrespectful.
How do you do the
and super
research?
rude.
How do you do the research? Do you have
Depends.
someone reading for you, or you're doing it yourself?
Are you kidding me? Absolute reading. For
No,
me?
not reading.
Absolutely not.
Searching and telling you here is
absolutely
some
not.
books. You read it?
No.
No.
I mean, there's no that to me is like inexcusable at the level I'm at anyway. You know what I mean? Like, give me a break. It's not. If I'm interested in the person, it's the onus should be on me to do my own research and to figure that shit out. That would be just.
So you said you have a book, someone booking.
So if someone has a book, if someone has a book coming out,
okay,
like whatever book it is, they send me the book. I read the book. If they don't have a book, or if they don't have a book, I Google them. I watch other interviews they've done. I watch other things that they've done. I watch the work that they've done. I listen. I listen to Audible all the time. I listen to other podcasts that they've been on. I do all that stuff. So I'm coming into it with questions of like things that I never got answers. That like I would be like, why that, or like I wonder why this, or.
Like when you're listening to another podcast and you wish the interviewer asked that question, that's when you go into it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or I ask them something that I think that other people would be like my listeners would be genuinely interested in knowing about, right? And that's how. And I think when you're in a conversation, you naturally ask different questions than if you're only just doing back research. So I think it's important to have a combination of having research so you know what you're talking about and you know what you're getting into, but then also having some form of, spontaneity where you'll let the conversation flow, where then if they say something, you can just, ask something that you are genuinely curious to know about that that makes sense for that conversation. Do you know, does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So I think that's what it is. But I think, again, that's what I was saying to you earlier. I think it's important to be curious. Just to have a podcast because everybody else is having a podcast, to me, is a stupid reason to have one. Mm-hmm. I think it's important to have a podcast because you genuinely are interested in talking to people. That's what makes a good podcast. That's what makes a difference between someone who's good at doing it and someone who's bad at doing it. If you have genuine interest in actually doing it for the right reasons.
What are the top 3 podcasts that you listen to?
You know what I love? I'll tell you my favorite podcast, but it's because of the dynamic. I love Smartless with Jason Bateman and Will Arnett and Sean. I can't remember his last name. The guy from Will and Grace. I find their dynamic together hilarious, and I just think that they're great, and I think that that's my favorite one. I also like Joe Rogan because he's very conversational, and I also like How I Built This.
With Guy Raz.
Yeah, I think it's really good.
Yosef was mentioning the top 5% of problems that you're trying to solve for in your life, and he was asking how do you find those problems in your guest's life and when you're interviewing them. What are the top 5% of things that you're trying to solve for in your own life?
But the top 5% of things, the top 5 things.
Oh no, top 5. Well, there's the 5% of things that you don't want to talk about, and there's
so you're
90%.
Basically asking me what is the 5%? What is the 5%? What is the stuff that you don't want to talk about?
You don't want to talk about.
So you want me to overtly just tell that to you without you just getting it out of me? That's like cheating in a way, right?
Cheating.
It is cheating.
No, it's not cheating.
The whole idea of this whole thing is that you have to be a good enough interviewer and make me comfortable enough where I just tell you those things without me even knowing that I actually told you those things. Versus me just being you being overt and being tell me those things that you don't want to talk about. You know what I
No,
mean?
not necessarily things you don't want to talk about. Maybe just things that are keeping you up at night now at this stage in your career as you've built out this empire of like media. You can talk about things you don't
Okay,
like to
that's
talk
easy
about.
though. That's more
Yeah.
me. I can answer you that question being guarded, and that doesn't mean anything. I think every day is a challenge, right? I think right now I have a book coming out, which is super challenging in terms of the book launch itself. It's a lot of time, commitment, and I want to make sure that I do a good job with it. So I'm working on that. And also, I think really my biggest challenge in general is just the fact that I try to be a good mom. I have 2 kids, and I try to be a good mom. I try to be a good wife. I try to be, try to do my career and be the entrepreneur and do all the projects and work projects that really keep me feeling that, like, give me the energy and the feeling of being alive. Because I genuinely like to work. I genuinely get a lot of energy from that energy. So I'm not somebody who like wants to be sitting on a beach and getting my nails done all day. That doesn't work for me. So to be able to like do as many deals and to start as many projects on the business side as I want to do, and to also be a present mom, that's a really tough thing to balance.
Does it happen to you? Because
And I feel
does
guilty
it
a
happen
lot.
to you that you're sitting with the kids, and let's just say you want to get a big person on the show or something, and then they want your attention, but your mind is somewhere else?
Yeah, it happens all the
You
time.
you felt the guilt or something?
I feel guilt.
Yeah.
I feel guilty all the time, and I don't care what people say. It doesn't
did you
feel.
find something to disconnect at that time?
I try. I think it's. I don't believe when people are like. I don't believe there is balance in life. I think it's a total misuse of the word, and I think it's a misconception. I think that anything that you're good at requires an exorbitant amount of time. Anything that you want to be successful in requires an exorbitant amount of time that it's not flippant. So if you want to be an extraordinary parent, you got to put in an extraordinary amount of hours and time. I don't care what you say.
Absolutely.
If you want to be an extraordinary business owner, you got to put an extraordinary amount of hours into that business, or else you know what happens? It flails and it fails.
Someone else is going to eat your lunch.
And someone else
the more
will be-
dedicated one is going to come and eat your lunch.
100%.
Yeah.
I know that. I know that going in. So I've made kind of concessions with myself that I'm willing to not be as powerful as a business person as I probably could. I'm just going to be honest, not to sound arrogant, but that I may be able to be, because I want to be present with my kids. To me, being a good mother is more important than being a good business person. At the end of the day, I'm not going to be lying on my deathbed being like, God, I wish I closed another deal.
Never.
Yeah. God, I wish I like had that, that power lunch with so-and-so. Fuck no. Mm-hmm. I mean, I do not want someone else raising my kids. I don't want someone else or my kids feeling that they are, or they take second fiddle to some bullshit business thing that I'm working on. But I'm not going to lie to you and say that I'm not distracted a lot, and that that I don't look at my phone constantly. And I mean, there's been plenty of baseball games, soccer games, dance things, gymnastic things that I'm at, and I'm on my phone working. That's my happy medium. I'm not perfect. Mm-hmm. I'm not claiming to be perfect. And I feel like all I'm trying to do is do the best I can by doing both things that I really love in good enough.
Yeah.
Right? And if the bell curve or the bell curve or whatever, the pendulum swings, I'd rather be a better mom than a better business person.
Yeah, I think that everyone feels the same. I feel like want and possible. Like once you have the opportunity, you still chase it. I don't think
right.
It's just like, yeah, I want to, but it's also, I don't know if it's just what I'm thinking, because I always say this to myself all the time, because that's the right thing to say to yourself. but now you have to go and do it. And then comes that mind where you say, well, I'm doing it also for the kids, for the future, and all that. It's just very challenging, and you feel the guilt keeps coming and chasing you. Like, I can tell you the burden that is removed after you can get out of the business and you say, okay, now I can be with them. And even then, it's hard to be present because you don't know how.
100%. I don't know how. I think that's a very true truism. And I think that's actually a very wise and
It just takes
perceptive
time.
thing to
It takes time.
to say, because I think that is so true. I don't even know how. That's actually very true, because I'm so used to being
you
on.
will in time, because I'm looking backward, and I said, when I pulled out, I was exactly the same. Today, I'm different. I'm better. Am I 100%? No, because new ideas come up, new things comes up, and I'm like, again, I'm doing this to myself, and what the hell was... But it's not the same like when you have to manage so many people and your mind is busy with stress. So it takes a while to train yourself into it. Just
do you ever
discipline.
shut off? Like, do you ever try and shut off? Like, even like keep Shabbat for like a day and shut off from like all work stuff. So it's like pure family.
It's a no.
Yeah, I mean, like,
No, I also think I have so much like I have like ants in my pants, and I've like my mother would say that, my grandmother. I'm like
like
always
being
sitting.
present. You gotta
I'm
find a
sitting on
way.
spilkas constantly. Like, I'm not good at just being. Like, that's my work in life,
Yeah.
right? Is just being okay with
You're
being
impulsive,
okay.
of course.
Super impulsive.
You're impulsive.
I feel like I just feel like it's like an ADD thing. I'm not saying I have ADD.
I say I have ADD. It's okay.
I think
That's what makes
everyone
us
says.
special.
I think it's an overused statement. I just think I do have impulsivity. I don't like to sit for long periods of time. I like to be in motion. I think an object in motion stays in motion. I think that it's very hard for me to be. So I do find it really difficult.
being present. That's very tough.
It's hard.
That's very, very tough.
Well, Jennifer, listen, thank you so much. It was amazing 2 hours.